Hey everyone, this is Rain from Rain and Ruminate. Welcome to my channel. So let's get right into it. Recently I saw Antonio Moore's video on sinners, and I thought it was okay. I had some issues with his takes, but something came back to me and it just reminded me of his hatred of Issa Rae. I think Antonio has an issue with people who succeed in fields that he wants to be in. And the reason I'm particularly going to focus on his reviews of Issa Rae is because I think it's in poor taste to use the ADOS movement, to use a heritage movement to stoke hate against someone for no apparent reason. Like, whether or not you liked her show, I don't know that I felt like his criticism of her was warranted. Now, mind you, this is something he did from a year ago, but I just remembered it because of his review of Sinners, and it felt like such hateration. It felt like such purposeful and kind of tangential criticism that it just reminded me of how long he has kind of low-key bullied Issa Rae for absolutely no reason. And so I'm going to go over this video because it seems like some of his audience actually bought into the BS, and I'm going to go through it line by line. And I think the real reason he has an issue with her is not because she's not ADOS. I think the real reason he has an issue with her is a bit more superficial than that. So let's go over some of his criticisms of her. He has hours of video and tons of tweets devoted just to this one person in Hollywood, and that should already be a red flag for you. But if it's not, watch my reviews of how he talks about Issa Rae, and you'll understand why I think the con here is actually Antonio Moore, and that's unfortunate. So let's get into it. Oh, just to situate myself as well, I don't know Issa Rae, but I do know people who know her. I feel like that's probably not unusual if you're in our age range and you grew up in LA. So I don't know her, never met her, but there's just something very weak about attacking her specifically for her show. I don't know. So let's get into it. Also, I will say I'm not ADOS or FBA. I have immigrant parents. I'm Nigerian American. I'm a second generation. That means my parents were born there. I was born here. So just, providing context. So here we go.
What up, y'all? This is Attorney Antonio Moore. Let's get right to it. I'm here to have a discussion about none other than Issa Rae, Insecure. I'm hoping that you guys are in a better place than you were 6 and 7 years ago to hear this discussion, because there was a lot of mess when it came to that show. It's a lot of mess in my view when it comes to Issa Rae, and a lot of you guys are very, very confused about American descendants of slavery, about African American culture, about just the reality that Africa is a continent, not a country. And many of those plays were how the Insecure show anchored inside of you. Here we had a woman in Issa Rae who really came to LA late, and I believe by the time we get to the end of this show, you might have a little better understanding, particularly if you're not here in California, let alone Los Angeles, of why it was such a problem. And if you don't, you just missed the boat. Let's talk about it.
I mean, consider the fact that he made this video last year. The show had already been off the air. This has been a damn near decade-long hard-on he has for this girl and her success. So I feel the need to call it out, because the more I watch his videos, and I've gone through his library a little bit, I realize that his issue with her is not really her or what she has done. Is what she represents in relation to what he represents. And it's a weak move, but let's go.
Before I get going, somebody said her mom's from Louisiana. Show me the picture from the family reunion. With Issa Rae at the family reunion. Your mama being from Louisiana don't matter more than you living in Dakar, Senegal for years. She was in Senegal while the riots was going on in LA. Talk about it. God damn.
All right, so this is the first issue I have with him. So her mother is ADOS, her mother is African American. He says that the fact that her mother's from Louisiana doesn't matter more than the fact that she was raised partially or mostly in Senegal, which is weird, because if you're running a heritage movement, the idea of a heritage movement is that no matter where you are, you have a lineage that's a part of who you are, both culturally and in your DNA. So it doesn't matter where she was raised. There are plenty of black people who, because of the military, their kids are raised in Germany, their kids are being raised in Italy, Korea, their kids are being raised all over the world. If they're diplomats, all over the world. So are you saying those aren't ADOS people, or is this just the issue you have with Issa Rae? And I want to take this a step further, because I looked up her mother. Her mother's very easy to find. I'm not trying to dox or anything like that. But if you look at this picture of her mom, she actually looks like her mother. And her mother, if you were to see just her mother, you would assume that her mother was African American more than you assume that she's African. She looks like a woman. She looks like exactly what she is. She looks like a middle class African American woman from Louisiana. And I think that if Issa had her mother's complexion, he would not throw that out there like that. And this is concerning to me because I've noticed this amongst people who are pushing especially the FBA folks more so than the ADOS folks. There's this almost, you know, phenotype preference. And if you look too dark, if you look too African, then they'll call into question whether or not you're really of that lineage. And that is very dangerous territory as far as I'm concerned. And I do believe that if she were lighter, if she looked different, he wouldn't pull this argument that he knows is wrong. Like he knows he's BSing, but he's saying it only because you can only pull that on someone that looks like Issa Rae. It's disgusting to me. It's also disgusting because look at him. If I were to look at him, I would assume he could be from anywhere. He could be American, he could be Caribbean, he could be African, he could be from anywhere. So to call into question her heritage, it only has to be because of the way she looks, because she sounds American, right? So if Issa didn't tell you that her parents were foreign, you know, would you really know? And she looks like her mother. She looks like a deeper complexioned version of her mother. So for him to pull that, he's pulling that because of the way she looks, and it's disgusting. And also to bring up the whole idea of family reunions, because I saw a video from him later in which he says that, you know, the family reunion issue amongst ADOS people, especially those who've been ravaged by, like, you know, the war on drugs and the dismantling of the black family, it's such a weird card to pull on this particular woman when in another live stream you'll go on and talk about the you know, dissolution and the fracturing of the black family, and how things like that aren't happening as frequently because people don't have the kinds of close connections to their family members and extended family members that they used to have. Antonio's a hater. Like, it's gross. It's really gross.
Y'all struggle. Let's talk about it today. Her mama from Mississippi. Her mama used to live around Compton. Lord, I mean, I just don't even know what y'all be talking about. She lived in Dakar, Senegal during the riots. The LA riots were on fire. I was 12 and it was on fire. And anybody this age struggled with that. She was in Dakar, Senegal, but her mama.
Do you see the way he even moves? There's an energy here that if I was Issa, you need to have him on a watch list, because this is envy on a different level.
Louisiana, that's what y'all say. So let's get right to the discussion. This woman who I guess maybe worked on the set or whatever, she got honest finally in 2024. To me, it reminded me of Julian with, for those of you that know about it, with Jay Morrison. For me, when you was the problem. When we was trying to talk about it, you told us that we didn't know what we was talking about. Now you know what you're talking about, because there's a whole environment that comes out of American descent slavery and the ADOS movement of having a discussion that needed to be had, that flat blackness don't make no sense. I just want to talk about it.
Pay attention to this term, flat blackness, because you know, he's inconsistent with how he applies it.
I'm a liar or something, right? Again, my name is Attorney Antonio Moore. I'm here to have this discussion. I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised. You know,
I'm also from Los Angeles, born and raised. Probably in the same area he is from. Definitely, most likely. Let's go into
did a documentary on Freeway Rick, nominated for an Emmy on that. You know, I optioned the show. It's funny, BMF is on right now. I had optioned to wrangle into them to try to do Rick's story, but that damn Singleton copycat snowfall stuff messed a lot of stuff up.
Keep that in mind. So he had ambitions in the industry. He's had a bit of success, but not quite the success that Issa has had. So keep that in mind when you watch the way he evaluates her work and the work of other black people who are successful in this industry.
So when we talk about this, I'm about to hurt a lot of people's feelings, because I'm going to get real and tell y'all stuff that y'all might not know, because it was a show that was shared nationally, but it didn't really explain. She don't know what she's talking about when it comes to LA. Let's get to it. Shout out to Zoe. I'm a liar or something. Let's talk about it. I went to UCLA, so I'm from here, like that.
Do you think the average black man in his demographic group went to UCLA? He talks about flat blackness, but doesn't seem to understand that black people, even ADOS black people, are diverse in other ways other than their race. But let's get into it.
So somebody posted this. It got like 100,000 views. Shout out to them for posting. Tony Yvette said this about Issa and her show Insecure years ago. Constantly amazing how ahead of the curve they are. And people are like, who's Tony and Yvette? Well, Tony and Yvette are the people who kicked this off right here. Controversial group, ADOS divides black Americans and fight for economic equality. This is ABC News. It's also the New York Times. So you missed that. I don't know what you've been doing, because this is ABC News that was covering myself, Yvette, recording it.
This guy has a little bit of, he has stars in his eyes, for real.
And we basically led to a discussion. Now you got Nicole Hannah-Jones acting like it wasn't in the Times already and rewriting it again in the Times. It was already in the New York Times. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's get to it. So Amanda Seales goes on the Shannon Sharp show, and she talks about a party and something else. She's not protecting Issa Rae. Amanda Seales also is Caribbean. Ain't nothing wrong with being Caribbean, but also you ain't in the end ADOS like that. Let's talk about it. For Issa Rae, people will point to the mama being from Louisiana. Please do show me the Louisiana family reunion. Where the cousins at?
Where are your family reunion pictures? Where are your cousins at? Where are your parents at?
Because a lot of times we forget the Senegalese husband and elevate the mama being from Louisiana, because it means that then we can anchor a story that ain't really her truth. It's our own belief of her truth that allows us to watch that show that didn't make no goddamn sense.
That show is her maternal truth. And I think it's interesting that he's bringing up her husband, because ADOS men have their own patterns in marriage. And I have never, ever heard him question a black man over who he marries, including the black man that usurped his idea, renamed it, and is now profiting off of it. He has never, ever challenged Tariq Nasheed over his own personal hypocrisies. But I'll digress, because one thing I know about men like Antonio is they do not challenge other men.
Can I talk? We running it up today. A lot of feelings gonna get hurt. How many y'all from the Ladera Heights and Windsor Hills up in here?
Me?
I'm gonna explain that too. You know, y'all know that whole area, the Black Beverly Hills, was, and I learned this during the documentary, it was created by a brain drain out of the ghetto.
Absolutely.
Where all the doctors and lawyers and professionals said, we ain't gonna be around the other folks no more. That's where she moved at 14.
Okay, so does he not realize that these were ADOS people too? So he's mad at her for moving there while acknowledging that there was no place to move to had they not established that area for themselves. So if this is flat blackness, why aren't you mad at the ADOS people who created that environment? Because they are not working class. They were not poor. They are black, yes, but there are other identities that are just as salient to who they are. And he wants to ignore that because it then complicates the way that he digs at Issa Rae constantly. He can't talk about the fact that black people are diverse ideologically and economically without challenging his argument about Issa Rae not being one of them, when in fact she is a type of black person from LA. She's a type. She's not his type, but she is a type. So let's just watch this video really quickly, because I want to show you what the original black residents of this area said about living in this area.
Found out that almost 1,700 Negroes are moving into Los Angeles a month. By 1970, there'll probably be 1 million Negroes in this city. And I know that people are concerned about this. They may not talk about it very often, but I certainly heard them shudder in church when he said there'd be 1 million Negroes in Los Angeles.
We shudder because we're saying, in essence, the majority of these people are not like we are. And
not like we are. They're not like us. These are ADOS people saying that those people coming from the South are not like us. You did not need black immigrants or black upper class immigrants, because it's not all black immigrants. You don't need people like Issa Rae's father to establish classism amongst black people. It was already here.
We felt that maybe some of us felt we left the South because we were getting away from this problem. We are part of this exodus too. But we are a little maybe embarrassed by the fact that here we're going to have a mass element come in that's going to create a tremendous social problem in the community, to which we find a great deal of difficulty in relating to.
Well, I don't sound like a do-gooder, because I really am not, and I'm somewhat upset. But I do think that with these people coming in who are not our intellectual equals, nor are they about sociological
Intellectual equals.
They're not to be a handicap to us. They'll find their own level. Now, I do sound like a snob, but I don't mean it this way. But they're used to living a certain way, and they too might rise up above their origin, and might one day be our associates.
The whole tone of this meeting is we're setting ourselves up as little puppet Jesuses. We can't help anyone else until we help ourselves. The Negro has had two professions, his own medicine, dentistry, law, or psychiatry, and he has the profession of being a Negro. And many of us have come out here to escape from this second profession of being a Negro.
Okay, I'll stop there because I think there's no need to belabor my point at this point. But these are black ADOS people who are speaking like American capitalists, because it is what they are. Race is not the only factor here. Okay, they are culturally different from the people coming, and she's saying that. Now, I would never say intellectual equal. That woman sounds like a racist, right? But what they're saying is they don't feel commonality with you, despite the fact that they share your heritage. This is something that Antonio, he walks right up to the point, then he walks right back away from the point, because the point doesn't support his hatred and jealousy of Issa Rae.
All right. So you got this Issa Rae, and she said that she insecure and awkward girl, that a lot of the little girls that went to UCLA and USC feel real good about themselves because she can do the perform stuff I can too. Your mama had you inside when the street lights came on. But I knew Nipsey though. That's what they tell me. I need to show this clip for you to get a context. Then I'm coming and we're going to just get to the discussion. Let me see if I have it here, and I do.
I realized there are some parallels, but that's not the story she was telling. She was telling her story as an African woman or child who immigrated to America, was likely bullied and targeted for being different by Black Americans and European Americans and Hispanic Americans and etc., and who had to acquiesce to Black culture. And she puts it on as a mask. And I say that because what I saw in her production of Insecure felt like a caricature of Black Americans. Right? Like the first season, I was like so excited. I was like, yay, all Black cast, and the Black leads are very chocolate. Let's get it. But like after that first season, it was a wrap for me. I was like, I can't. The way those characters like imitated Black Americans, not Nigerian Americans, not Ghanaian Americans, they were imitating Black Americans 4 generations deep, 5 generations deep. And it didn't feel authentic. In fact, it felt like a parody of us. Right? It felt like what these folks do. It was, and really, in particular, it was the way they use the N-word, right? Because I see this with people who like have some proximity to Blackness, but ain't Black. And note, when I say Black, I'm talking Black American, right? Anyways, the way they use the N-word, it was the frequency. Like they would give like a script, the script would call for like, 10 sentences, which was a total of like 150 words. 75 of those words would be the N-word. Like y'all are too happy, too excited to use it. You were overusing it, misusing it. It just didn't feel authentic. It felt like someone who had this voyeuristic view into Black.
So,
before he talks, I'm going to say that I actually agree with her. I wasn't a huge fan of the show in general, but not because of that. But the few episodes I saw, that stuck out to me. Even though I'm a child of immigrants, I think my early years were in a working class part of Black LA before my parents moved. But that stuck out to me, and it also stuck out to me because typically when people use it, girls didn't use the N-word like that. Like boys did, where I was. Boys used it, and even not nearly as much as I heard it on the show, but girls didn't refer to other girls like that. We didn't use it casually in a way. That was just my environment personally. But I think it's interesting that she attributes this to her being African, and then she says Nigerian and Ghanaian, both of which Issa Rae is not. So, and another issue is, again, these people don't know Black middle class and upper middle class Los Angeles. These are people who have that proximity, but they go to school with white people. They go to, they go to social clubs around white people. So they are also a bit voyeuristic. They would come down back in the day on Crenshaw on Sunday and observe. And then they would go back to where they're from. They'll go back to the Ladera Heights area and laugh and talk about those people over there. They enjoyed being amongst it, but they weren't one of them either. So it's interesting to me that she attributed to her immigrant heritage rather than the fact that she's from a certain socioeconomic class in which these people have proximity to working class Black people, but they're not a part of that social group and they behave differently. They do.
that's the clip, and it didn't feel like it. It was that. And I tried to tell y'all that 7 years ago, and didn't nobody want to hear it, including somebody like this young woman that either watched the show, made the show, she had the script. Because you were immersed in this false image of blackness. Even to this day, she's struggling, Black American, and not just say ADOS, it'll make it easier for you, sweetheart. Let's talk. So I told people ahead of time, Issa Rae was masking ADOS Black folk, and people were confused. Well, here it is explained on the set of Insecure. I think she was talking about the script, so I'm presuming she was on the set or in some way. Lord, people be struggling. That lady was a Black character on that show. So when she says Tony and Yvette, she's talking about myself and Yvette Cardinal. Shout out to Breaking Brown. But we ain't Insecure, so I don't know nothing about that.
The show is not about you, though. Like, what is wrong with this man? The show is not about you. It's about a lot of Black young girls who do relate to that. So you're not her age mate, you're not in her demographic, you're not her gender. Why would you relate to this show? Why would you expect any show and every show about Black people to resonate with you specifically? He talks about flat Blackness, then he flattens the Black experience by assuming that he's supposed to relate to all of it.
My mom and dad had me at 16, 17. They were never together in my life, to my understanding.
Good for you.
I had no mama and daddy. I was a doctor. Almost everybody in my family, damn near, never left the country. In the 70s, I don't think that people understand how odd this thing was. I don't think people understand how odd it is that now, from Obama to Kamala to Issa Rae, there appears to be this international project to make us skate past the cost of being ADOS and the suffocation of it all by using people that are extreme aberrations, and then white folks saying, we're going to make them president of America. Or we're going to give them a show, even if there ain't no show here.
I'm not sure what an extreme aberration is, but I think Obama's mixed race heritage, I think his pedigree in terms of his education, I think all of those factors are just important to his rise politically as anything else. Mind you, I agree to the degree that I think it's important to delineate between those people who are ADOS and those who aren't. And I think those people who are ADOS should be the measure of whether or not progress is happening in this country. So to that I agree. But both Kamala and Obama are also mixed race. Like, they're not fully black. There's so many other angles you can look at this in terms of which blacks are often the first. And that has always been historically true. You look at some of the biggest black political figures throughout history and they're usually mixed race. Okay, so I think more than even their immigrant heritage is the fact that oftentimes they're only half black.
This didn't do nothing but track them reality shows. Wasn't nothing good about it. Can we talk? But it anchors right into that whole black middle class, Windsor Hills with Darren Heights stuff that we've seen. I want to go back because I want to make sure everybody understands where I come from and how long this discussion has been going on. Right now, I'm cutting a 2-minute clip, but at the end of the show, there's going to be 10 minutes with myself and Yvette over the years talking about this Issa Rae. This insecure, this reality of all the confusion around being ADOS. But just listen to this 2 minutes. See, I think that right now, what we got to understand is people ain't paying their tithes. You know, Trump got tithes? American DOS got tithes. And we're not just talking about money right now. We talking about recognition. You got Issa Rae with Insecure. She know how to be black when she's selling the show, but when it's time to talk about race in the Cosmo, she talking about how she don't want to talk about race. Lived in Senegal and in Potomac with the white people. Then you came over here at 14 to Ladera. That's one of the wealthiest. They call it the Black Beverly Hills. When did you get to experience blackness? To be making a TV show. Now the question.
Is Ladera Hills not a version of blackness? Do you not know that there are black people that live in Potomac, Maryland? That black people are overrepresented in those government jobs in which they have upper middle class communities in that area and they send those children to those schools? Like, yeah.
The question becomes about Africans. If you have Nigerian or you have Senegalese and you have African American, what is your obligation when your daddy or your daddy starts talking, it's presuming he's the African, bad about African Americans? What you gonna say?
Why are you putting this on her? Do you know her father? What's her father's name? Do you see how wild, do you see how insane he sounds? Have you ever heard her say anything about her father? And he has hours of him ranting about this girl for no reason.
Oh, you gonna go quiet? Oh, that's just him. Oh, he don't know no better. Would you say the same thing if your mama that's African American started talking about how Senegal or Nigeria is a third world country? I expect you to say something both ways.
I mean, there's a good chance that since her mother lived there for a long time, there's a good chance her mother's talked all kinds of smack and had the right to because she lived there, as far as I'm concerned. So this is a non-issue because you don't know these people. But he has been ranting about her and her family and her heritage for years. I don't want people who have justifiable claims and concerns about the status of ADOS culture in this country to confuse what he is doing with concern for protecting the heritage. What he is doing is attacking someone that I think he wishes he had the opportunities that she had.
Decent at least. But I really expect you to step up because your whole life is built out of the gains, the pressures, and the push of your American DOS mother or father. We have to recognize, see, what we doing right now is like you come here and you live off of this and we didn't give you nothing. Nah, I gave you everything. You can go back to that little country you came from.
She came from here, and that's another thing. Like, I'm not a Halfrican. Both of my parents are African. Issa Rae has a mother. This is her mother, so this is her birthright. She doesn't owe you anything. She doesn't owe Antonio anything. This is her birthright. The same rant that you're going on, you don't have to preach to the choir. She doesn't have to participate in blackness to your liking. And here's the issue that I have with Antonio's, because he knows who to sass at. He does not sass at Tariq Nasheed. He does not sass at any men. He certainly doesn't sass at Ice Cube, who has not lived in Los Angeles, nowhere near no urban community in decades. So why attack this particular girl? You're attacking her because you are annoyed that she got opportunities that you were supposed to get and you didn't get. But that's not her fault.
You live there. Live your whole life there. Hopefully it'll work out. But you're here. And as long as you're here, going to Stanford, getting a show on HBO, everything comes through your mother. Issa Rae, everything. What you think, Yvette?
Hold on, I want to get the rock thing you said. Like, this guy has made a life of making himself racist. Like, you don't get to be racist and then play John Henry. Like, you don't get to, that's his life. He made himself an indistinguishable person. So he can be in the movie with the white woman. He can be in the movie with the Latina. He can be in the movie with who? He's a racist man. And so you award this racist man with a character that's like this, that's about race. That's what you're doing. Now, we can have a conversation about John Henry working himself to death and all that kind of stuff and what that means. But what I'm saying to you is that we have to be very careful who we give this stuff to. We have to be very careful. And we need race people. And I'm not talking about this in terms of just black. I'm talking about American DOS in terms of what race is in this country and what it built into our lives in terms of that failure. We need people who represent that and who are that and who identify as that. We don't need you to be racist, Rob, because Rob made himself into a man with a tan. He doesn't identify. He just says, we need him, I'm a person of color.
Or not, or half. So at the end of the show, towards the end, I'm cutting that last 10 minutes, and you can stick around and get that 310-388-3499 to call in. I want to hear from you. But please support the channel. Please support the channel on Patreon, on Cash App, and you can use even the super chat right now. And I'll bring up your comments as I see those, because a lot of times this stuff don't get monetized. It's too racy to have a conversation about. But it needs to be had, and you got to invest in that conversation. Whatever you got. I'm just telling you. Can we talk? So we had this whole black middle class that came about, right? This whole idea of the arrival of black folk. But the kids started crip walking. That's what she's doing right there. This buffoonish character, Issa Rae, is crip walking.
For the record, anyone who's crip walking who's not a crip is going to look like a bit of a buffoon. But it only bothers him because it's her, like I said.
What you know about crip walking? This. The hood. So this girl who grew up in Dakar, Senegal, people talk about she was born here, we'll talk about it in a second. If you born here, your mama and daddy moved you out of here when you were a toddler to Dakar, Senegal, where you got a maid, not in the context of American life, in the context of that oppression in Dakar, Senegal, and then you come back here and go to White Potomac, Maryland. I don't want to see you crip walking. But what you talking about, Tom? I'm talking about that.
You went to UCLA. Why are you now the arbiter of who and who can't crip walk? On some level, you're an elitist too, and you certainly make sure you mention you're an attorney. So, again.
Blah, blah. Los Angeles. I want to have a discussion because the blind spots of blackness have left ADOS outside of their own identity. So you're sitting outside of your own identity. Now you got Obama, the president that was white and Kenyan. You got Kamala, who was Jamaican and Indian, the vice president. You got the Haitian press secretary. You got Issa Rae. She making the shows. And people be like, she's from Louisiana. Show me the family reunion. Where the cousins at? But to have this discussion, I need for those people that are here and those people particularly that are not here in Los Angeles to understand something. Moving into Windsor Hills or View Park, and there's some good people over there, but there's some real bad ones too. Because of what created that area. And a lot of people that kids there, they don't even know. So when hip hop came, a lot of people, kids, wanted to come down the hill and be part of the Crenshaw culture and everything. Mm-hmm. But their mom and daddy had moved up the hill. Mm-hmm. So before Windsor Hills really became what it was, black doctors and lawyers used to live amongst like regular folk, like my parents. So we had role models. What happened was, prior to Issa Rae's era, a lot of them decided to aggregate and basically partition themselves up into Windsor Hills. The green is the black folk. Now, what's interesting about what you see in LA, and this is View Park, Windsor Hills, is the other thing that happened is the way that our property tax works, people were not paying the appropriate property tax to build up their own community and schools. So the equity in their house was growing. They pull out the equity, and then they send their kids to school where this blue is every day. Hold on, that ain't even it. In addition, if you look at this chart, Compton over here, a lot of these people who kids was over, they didn't let them come past this red line. Western, even Crenshaw sometimes, but Western and all that. So all their shopping was over here in the blue. But they on here making the show and everything. Can we talk? I want to make sure everybody understands. So you up?
Right. So they are making a show about people like them. So what is the problem?
In this bubble, you only debutante and do stuff with people in the bubble, and then you shop over at the blue. Mm-hmm. And you don't never come past this red line. But when it's time to do the show, this you. Issa Rae don't know shit about no crip walking. Mm-hmm. She don't know nothing about nothing that she doing. If you go back and watch the Aqua Girl show, and I'm learning to rap, she's been cosplaying ADOS black folks her entire time.
I wouldn't call that cosplaying. I would say that that's what a lot of black people in entertainment do. They're disproportionately wealthy. They're disproportionately from that area. And then they put on shows like Blackish, or they make other types of black content because that's what they are able to sell and promote in the industry. So she's not behaving any differently than other black people who are in that industry. And I think someone wrote an article about how they're disproportionately Nepo babies and the children of people who've worked in the industry, and that they provide to some degree an idea of blackness that white people can digest. So he's right on that. But Blackish was the same way. You know, a lot of these shows that were made are the same way. And there is something to be said about what he's saying. But if he's saying flat blackness is a problem, he needs to contend with the fact that classism is a part of the diversity of blackness. And if you can't open your mind to that lens, you are participating in the flat blackness that you say you seem to have a problem with. The black people from those areas are not like you. They said it themselves. They're not like you, despite the fact that you share a racial category. And something else that he doesn't seem to understand is that, like, yeah, I grew up in that working class area, and my parents put us initially in Catholic school. Now, the Catholic school movement was born out of desegregation, right? So when there was a Jim Crow and black people weren't allowed to go to school with white people, you didn't have a lot of Catholic schools. Catholic schools emerged because working class and middle class white people did not want to share schools with children of color. And so private schools were put in place because they can discriminate, and they did not have to explain to the government why they discriminated. So it became a marker of class in which you paid to have your kids segregated from other kids. And I went to a Catholic school that, you know, was initially white but became blacker and more Latino as more black people kind of became socioeconomically upwardly mobile. So the Catholic school movement preceded the now charter school movement, and now in this era of Trump where they're dismantling the Department of Education, you're going to see a lot of that discrimination rise again. But I'm going on this rant because historically black people also sought to put their kids in those Catholic schools. I went to a Catholic school that was predominantly black, predominantly middle class black. Despite the fact that we were still living in a working class neighborhood, people scrimped and saved money so that their kids can go to that school because they didn't want their kids going to the local public school with all the bad kids, you know. So, and then if you could finally move somewhere else where your kid can go to a diverse school district, by diverse I mean not too many black kids. This is black people talking, not too many black kids. This is what you did. This is American capitalism at play. And capitalism is a part of black culture. There is class stratification. Black people are diverse. And Antonio does not seem to understand that.
All the way to the point where she decided, no, I'm going to marry a Senegalese man. I know there's only 20,000 or so here, but let me find one. I ain't going to be one of these ADOS.
That is so weird to me because I've seen him sit next to men who are married to mixed race girls, like Tariq Nasheed. He tucks his tail between his legs when it comes to Tariq. He sat next to Cornel West, who's opting on his third white woman. Antonio does not speak up towards men. He does not challenge black men about who they marry. Now, this particular girl, you're all up under her clothes. Why are you surprised that someone who's half Senegalese would have access to that community and marry a Senegalese person? You know, it would be different if she's Vietnamese from Texas and ended up with a Senegalese. Then I'd ask how that happened, but I'm not going to ask how a girl with a Senegalese father ended up with a Senegalese husband. You're just nitpicking because you hate her for no reason.
Can we talk? I'm going to piss some people off today. You up there in a nice house with your mama and daddy as pediatricians doing the crip walk.
I mean, the jealousy is just oozing. It's actually making me nervous.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. All right. Okay. So now I got framed Windsor Hills and Ladera Heights because that's the answer everybody uses. Again, 310-388-3499. I know a lot of people just going to take in the material. You don't go past this line. Western or we ain't going past Western. We ain't going to Watts, Nike outlet. We ain't going past nothing. We going to hit the blue where the white people at.
For me, it was the Slauson swap meet. Anything past that, you were in trouble. And even then, we couldn't go there all the time because, you know, they used to shoot that place up all the time. So
it's like if you go past that line, you just melt. But we can do that crip walk.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm framing this so y'all can understand because you had the rise of this idea of the black middle class, where it lives. Look at it. Again, at the same time, my mom and daddy is 16. By the time I graduated from UCLA, my mom, I think she was 32. What the fuck? 34, something like that.
I'm not trying to hate. Good. I'm proud of him. But what is his point here? Like, what is his point here?
Never married. And I'm bringing this up because you had this framing of this black elite that was Pan-Africanist mixed with crip walking, mixed with we live above you, mixed with we can define you, mixed with we ain't gonna tell the truth about not paying property tax properly, mixed with we gonna do all the shows and act like we live good. And then we got the crip walk.
He can't decide if he wants to attack her for her ethnicity or attack her for her class status. He can't decide.
So when they bring her to us, they bring her in a magazine, the Los Angeles magazine, the New York Times magazine, to do national expose back in 2015, but they only tell you half the story and leave people a lot confused. And this is right when we in it are bringing about the national discussion on ADOS, the first parts of it, and y'all don't know what to do with her. Don't she look just like me? The Misadventures of Issa Rae. 4 years ago, the comedian's YouTube series went viral. Awkward Girl. Go watch it again. She looked different, like they fixed her teeth in her neck.
I mean, this is disgusting. Like, that's Hollywood. Maybe she can send you some money so you can do something to your neck. Like, what is this? This is how you know this is not about her content. There's no analysis of the actual show. This is him ranting about her. And just like in a misogynistic, red pill adjacent, bitter man, he had to make sure he did take a dig at her looks. He's digging at her looks now. It's disgusting.
Skinnied her up? Come on. 4 years ago, the comedian's YouTube series went viral. Why is she finding it so difficult to replicate the success on television? That's what they were saying in 2015. Her mother, Delnia, is from Louisiana. Everybody like to talk about that, but don't never show us no family reunion. We don't never see no family reunion or no cousins working for her.
For a man who came from a broken home of teen parents, it is so odd that that's the test for him. It's so odd that that's the test for him.
But the Louisiana is supposed to mask everything. It's like Michelle Obama with Obama. Her mother, Delnia, is from Louisiana, and her father, Abdoulaye, is from Senegal. Notice that the mama first, in a sense. Even though she lived in Senegal, we don't want to say that first because we know what they met while studying in France. I need to go back because a lot of y'all are living in Instagram in 2024 or 2022. In the 70s, most, like many black folk hadn't even been on the plane. Even today, my family, almost everybody never left the country in 2024. So go back to the 70s. So her mama's in France, and she meet a Senegalese man. What are we talking about? They met while studying in France. Then she let the Senegalese man move her babies to Senegal. But
okay, so let me touch on a few points here that, again, this flat blackness is not giving him the ability to think critically about his own people's history and his own people's relationship to France in particular. Okay, so first things first. So he talks about them mentioning her mom being from Louisiana. Louisiana was a French property or territory at one point. So French culture permeates through the ADOS people in that region, you know, Beyonce, all of that, right? So it's not surprising that a middle-class black girl from Louisiana would go to school in France. Now, he says that black people have not been on planes in the 1970s, and that would be true. The majority haven't. And that's the case for 2025. The majority of Americans don't have passports. But if he were to say most black people don't go anywhere, so it's odd that she goes somewhere, that would be strange to the average black person, right? Just because the majority haven't gone somewhere doesn't mean that it's not an experience that is something that black people have experienced, right? He even bragged in another video that he's been all over the world. So are you an elitist too, since you've traveled all over the world and the average black person hasn't? No. But because this is Issa Rae, he needs to attack her some kind of way. Another thing I want to mention, particularly with black people's relationship to France, is that France has been seen historically as a beacon of freedom for African Americans. There's been like an obsession with particularly African American ADOS culture in France. With jazz, you have Billie Holiday, you have Josephine Baker, who I believe was a spy for the French government and is buried in one of the most elite parts of France at this point. You still have African Americans to this day saying that France is a place that they feel very connected to, as a place where they can almost escape like how oppressive the United States is. And when you consider the fact that black people have been kind of welcomed to some degree in France, even at the height of France's colonial project in the Caribbean and throughout Africa, that duality exists, where on one hand, they were welcoming to black Americans to some degree, those who are artists and intellectuals. And on the other hand, they were deeply oppressive to African and Caribbean people. So no one should be surprised that a black girl from a former French colony that studied French, that's what her degree is in, decided to go to school in France like a middle-class black girl in the 70s could, and then met a Senegalese man who was training to be a doctor, and then married him. So at the height of, the black power, black is beautiful, she met this African man who was also in training to be a doctor and married him. And something I have to say, based on the way Issa Rae's mother looked back in the day, she would have had her choice in France for sure. So I'm sure she was looked at as a prize by Issa's father as well. Like, you can bring this American girl of all things that you met in France back to Senegal. I'm sure she was a prize, and I'm sure she knew it. So that explains the connection there. To make it seem like there's something odd about her mother being in France because she's African American speaks to your lack of understanding of African American history, because African Americans have a connection to France, a deep connection to France that is different from Africans and different from Caribbean people. And it's just weird to me that he's trying to make this a point of suspicion when, to me, I didn't even have to do that much research to be like, okay, she studied French. She was a French teacher. She majored in French. She came from Louisiana. I went to school here in LA with kids with names like Broussard, Richard. Like, there were a lot of black people who had French names. So it's weird that he's trying to make this a point of suspicion, because like I said, this is not about him protecting the integrity of ADOS. This is about him attacking someone that he felt got opportunities that he didn't. He already mentioned that he had a show that was supposed to come into fruition and it didn't. Whereas he feels like this mediocre girl had a mediocre YouTube show and got a mediocre show on HBO. What he doesn't understand is that viral show, however dumb you think it was proof of concept. And at that time, they were pulling up all these YouTube stars. They were trying to make them TV stars. There's no way Issa Rae could have replicated that success today. But she was there at the right place at the right time to seek the right opportunity. It doesn't mean she was better than Antonio. It doesn't mean she's better than anybody. It was just her stars aligned in that way. But he can't get over that. He can't see past that. He has to attack this woman because, like I said, weak men don't attack men. There's so many other men he could be focusing his rage at, because that's what this is rage. But, you know, she's easy. He has hours of videos criticizing her.
Well, we gonna talk about her living in Louisiana, or being born and raised in Louisiana. Show me the picture of Issa Rae with Louisiana High School in Louisiana. They met while studying in France. Started a family that moved around a lot. Thank you so much, Pamela Graham. I'm out here. Somebody else donated too. I didn't put their stuff up. Let me go back. 310-388-3499. Freddie, thank you so much. Whew, it's gonna be heated. Y'all might want to stick around. I know some of y'all slide out a little early. Abdulier, a doctor, was working to build a pediatric clinic in nearby Inglewood. They didn't tell you that the first clinic was in Dakar. It didn't work though, so it didn't work. All right. Abdulier, a doctor, was working to build a pediatric clinic in nearby Inglewood. His clinic is still there on the corner of West Manchester Boulevard and South 7th Avenue. Rae took me by as part of her tour, so she's gonna tour you around. All right. Issa Rae's full name is Joissa Rae Diop. Be Joissa Rae Diop. See if we still watch the show. The family.
Joissa doesn't even sound like, what is he doing? How many people go by their government name when they become famous? In case, I'm sure you didn't need me to interject here, but I just want you to see how ridiculous his arguments are.
Into an exceptionally average life. So you got a pediatrician for a dad, and a mama that went to France and met him, and you got an average life for ADOS people. And I'll show you in a second. I wrote a piece for the Sentinel, the black newspaper here, showing that the middle black family in LA has $200 liquid, or had at that time. That was like 2018. They probably still right hovering around it. But they average with that. And they just came from Senegal during the riots. Until escalating gang violence unnerved Rae's mom. So as soon as the violence happened and the ADOSness ramped up, I'm going to Senegal. Not Louisiana, Senegal. Mm-hmm. The mama insisted that the family relocate to Senegal. We're going to skip over Louisiana, Atlanta, Tennessee. None of those.
Why would she relocate her family back to the Deep South when African Americans were moving out of the Deep South in droves during this era? Do you see how flat blackness has infected his brain? You married a doctor. You want a doctor to be successful. So you want him to go where he has the best opportunities to be successful. Why would they go there?
Going to Senegal, and it's the mama that did that. Living in Africa would also instill his children with discipline and respect for their heritage. You don't get no discipline in Los Angeles. But we're going to do the show, not about Senegal, because nobody want to see that. We're going to do the show about Crip walking in LA and this weird, awkward nastiness of black love as we see it and we don't understand. Can I talk?
It's interesting that he uses the word nastiness on her. I think he has some real latent, not just issues with, like, I guess you can call it Afrophobia. I would not be surprised if he's a colorist too. I really would not.
In 1988, they moved to a lavish home kitted out with a security guard and maid in an upscale neighborhood in Dakar. Notice he didn't say Senegal, so it's kind of unclear. You can say, well, people, no, say Senegal. The capital.
Who would think Dakar is in Georgia? Shut up, right?
Abdullah's hometown. Rae's father tried and failed to open a hospital there, and after about 2 years, the family moved back to Windsor Hills. That's not what happened. So this is the introduction article, and they already lied, misrepresented. They didn't move from Senegal to Windsor Hills. They moved from Senegal to Potomac, Maryland, which is 70% white.
Issa, if you don't have this man on a watch list, you got to do it. I'm directly appealing to your people, Issa. Please put this man on a watch list.
And that was a very purposeful thing. It was an avoidance of ADOS, the same ADOS that her mama ran from. I'll get to that in a second. Mm-hmm. But look at the timeline, because a lot of you guys don't slow things down to look at the timeline. What year did they move to Senegal? 88. What year is she born? 85. So 88 to 90. 92, 93, she's in Senegal, Dakar, Senegal. The person that had those formative years, then on top of it, from there all the way to 12, 13, she in White Man's Potomac. White Land. She admits it. That's who did the show. On LA, on Black Love, and she has Senegalese, because they get disciplined in Senegal. We gonna talk today. Her father is Dr. Abdoulaye Diop, a pediatrician and neonatologist from Senegal, while her mother, Delia Diop, is an African American teacher from Louisiana. Her parents met while they were in school in France. Issa and her family moved around from Los Angeles to Dakar and later wound up in Potomac. So why Potomac ain't in the New York Times article in 2015, it showed her going straight to Windsor, because they gotta tell you she's LA to make you buy a show.
I genuinely don't think anyone thought that this would impact the show at all. It is only a big deal in Antonio Moore's head. Only.
When Ray's family moved to the affluent U Park, Windsor Hills neighborhood, they hyper-selecting again. So we hyper-selected Senegal. Then we don't want to build nothing. We don't want to fix nothing about communities. We're not going to do no ADOS project. We're not going to do nothing for other people. What we going to do is go to Senegal, and then we're going to go to Potomac, and then we're going to go to LA, but we're going to hyper-select the richest neighborhoods each time and tell people we working class. I want you to understand, we don't have a clear timeline, but it looks like just about.
I also have to mention, I'm going to pull up this article in a second, but I have to mention that in some interviews I read about the show, she made it very clear that the show was not supposed to represent everybody in LA. She made that very clear. So certain, almost like when I was living in New York, there was what we call like this kind of black yuppie, buppy group. These people were black, they had black isms, you know, they kind of had proximity to the working class. Maybe they kind of appropriated some of that culture, but they were different. I got the same sense with Issa Rae and her show and her background. So the energy here is unwarranted, because I don't think she was ever trying to portray working class black LA in the way that he frames it, ever. I never got that impression, and she said very clearly in her interviews that she's not here to represent everybody. She said that. Yeah.
The 92 riots happened, and it's a great reflection of, I don't know what the person that do this better went through the riots. You a whole blackface, in my view. You wasn't even here for the LA riots, and you doing this like you from the bottom. She's a goofy ass girl y'all put up here.
I think it's way goofier for a man your age to be this obsessed with a girl like her. And I say this as someone who lived 2 or 3 blocks away from one of the first liquor stores that burned down during the riots at the time. You're the goof. You are the goof.
She just be doing stuff, y'all be watching it, don't know. And some of y'all don't know because you don't live here. Again, I'm going to show you the map. And I ain't saying everybody from Windsor Hills is like this, but most of them, they don't go past Western. They ain't fucking with no damn Food for Less. Food for Less is like art lower than Kroger's. It smells funny in there to them.
And why would you go there? Like, I remember going in there. We went in there one time. And then there was Ralph's on Manchester and Western. That one was fine. Why would you go to that Food for Less? I know exactly what he's talking about. Why would you go there? Like, is that proof that you're black? What is that?
They got Whole Foods at Fossil. Or they going real west. They like to shop over at Edwine. Look at that Edwine. And then complain about the price because you ain't supposed to be over there with your poor ass.
Nobody goes there.
Edwine. So she done moved the car. And while she in Senegal, we dealing with the riots. Me, my mama got to be 27 at this point, 28. When the riots happened, it was like right here on Crenshaw and Adams. All them gas stations was burning. They were burning everything down. Mm-hmm. She not here. The lady that did the show about LA ain't here. She in Senegal. So we out here, we protesting the police, we looting in the streets, getting us some shoes and some TVs, wrong or right. We high-fiving with the Latinos.
I have to stop here, because it's so, black men in California in general are really, really funny. Black men in Southern California have a very funny relationship with Latinos, and black men in Northern California have a very funny relationship with Asians. But it is interesting to me that we're living in an era in which black people in LA are more likely to be discriminated against in employment by Latino workers. Like, 2 of the biggest anti-discrimination cases, one in recent years, were black people suing Latino managers and workers for the way that they treat black people. So it's interesting how he frames a sort of camaraderie with Latinos while looting, when that was the beginning of an era of serious hostility between black people and Latino people in this city. So, you know, again, but he can't see all that. He doesn't have a lens to evaluate that because he has a 7-year hard-on for Issa Rae. It's crazy. And another thing I want to mention is that in my neighborhood, my working class neighborhood, the neighborhood that he described, we were not outside looting. You know, the men in my community, because most of us had our fathers present, even though they were working class and poor, or, you know, working class and middle class, or working class and poor, it was a bit more economically mixed. they were trying to secure the neighborhood. People had baseball bats. They were out there meeting, talking to each other about standing out in front of the homes to make sure no one comes to loot our homes. So these were all black men and women, and some of them elderly, some of them Vietnam War vets. They were out there trying to make sure that people weren't breaking into our cars and that a lot of the mess didn't come our way. And these were black people. But flat blackness tells him that there's only one narrative about the riots, and that's a narrative of social justice. And that's a narrative of, looting a little bit. And I'm gonna be frank, looting is not a big deal to me. I'm not here to make anyone look like a major criminal, even though obviously, it is illegal. But the point is, to me, so what if you weren't in the streets? Most black people weren't in the streets. Most black people had to go to work the next day or the day after that. Most people were worried about their property. Most people were worried about retaliation from the police. So it's interesting that he frames this like this, because we were still living in a working class neighborhood at this point, and that was not the sentiment. I can guarantee you, people were worried.
The Latinos and the blacks got together and was loot.
Black men love this shit. Like they always overlook the fact that there's tension between these groups, and I think it's directly tied to their preference for their women. But when it's time to stand up to Latino male power that is suppressing, the economic opportunities of black men have had in the city for decades now, he has nothing to say about it. I don't think he has a single video about that. I remember last year Trump was talking about so-called black jobs, and while what he said was harsh and what he said was in poor taste, the undercurrent there is that, quiet as it's kept, there is a group that is most harmed by undocumented workers coming into this country, and that group is working class, uneducated, unskilled black men. That group has been harmed the most by undocumented workers. I don't think he's that concerned about that. He's concerned about Issa Rae's show. Issa Rae's show is directly responsible for black male unemployment in LA. It's directly responsible for the fact that it's very difficult for black people to get jobs in Latino communities. Black people will hire them, they will not hire black people. In fact, I think the owner of Roscoe's, before he sold it, was sued for discrimination by black people. Imagine Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles, because he hired a Latino woman, started having an affair with her. They said within a year, she fired all of the black people that worked there, and they were only speaking Spanish in the kitchen. Woman looked like the lady that killed Selena. Took his business down. Took all the black people out that business, because black men like Antonio are busy with this fantasy in their head that these people are not his competition, because they want access to their women, rather than standing out there in front of the Home Depot and calling ICE or saying, hey, these are jobs that black men used to do and used to be able to make a bit of a living off of. He's not concerned about that. He's concerned about what Issa Rae did 7 years ago. This is the problem. This is the problem. And it's a bigger problem because he's using what I consider to be a good political and heritage movement, the ADOS movement, to mask his own jealousy and I think really sordid, weird fixation on Issa Rae.
She ain't here. She don't know. She ain't here. I don't even know if they got it on TV in Senegal. So this is looting during the riots. People was running in wrong to right, and they was grabbing shoes, and they was grabbing TVs. You might see somebody rolling down the street. Well, the big old projection TVs, one of those in 2 shopping carts, trying to push down the street. People was taking safes and all that. There's a pawn shop, and they was taking the safe, I think, out of that one. Everything was on fire. But you know who wasn't here? Issa Rae. She was in Senegal, because her mama ran.
So?
I see you, Issa. Part of this show is to understand not only the arc of LA, but the arc of ADOS folks over the last 20 to 30 years, and how somebody that ran to Senegal don't get to tell that story. And for you to watch that story, you're watching a photocopy of a photocopy.
She's telling a particular type of black story, and it's a particular type of black story that black people, some, a minority, related to. That's all you have to take. That's all you have to take from it. Just like the show you would have put on TV if they allowed you to, would have only related to some black people. It wouldn't have been everybody's story. But again, this isn't about Issa or her heritage. This is about his personal grievance with his lack of opportunity in an industry that gave her an opportunity.
They was out here. We was selling food, all that. Look, I don't think people remember. Go look at videos of the riots. I told people yesterday, she wasn't born and raised in Los Angeles. A large chunk of her life was in a white community in Maryland. You made a Play-Doh person, and I mean, in Issa Rae, you formed the idea of her based on what you wanted her to be to make that show make sense. She was immersed in white and Senegalese life. You have made up her life. She also lived in Senegal for years. This is Issa Rae for you. You done put on some arms and some eyeballs and some feet. She a whole Los Angeles piece of Play-Doh for you. So because they live well, she can't be ADOS. That was somebody's response to me saying that her family lived in Senegal with a maid, a Senegalese maid. I'll explain that in a second. That's like a whole different level of oppression. Many of you don't grasp the conversation. and relegate the conversation to your limitation. Come on. So no, you don't grasp the suffocation of being ADOS. See, ADOS is about not being able to go run the Senegal. It is a suffocation and a lack of opportunity that she didn't experience. Not this lady.
You're still not addressing what this woman is saying. Again, because I said that narrative about class and capitalism as a part of black culture, as much as it is a part of white culture, he does not understand. Or he understands it, but because it doesn't support his hatred of her, he doesn't want to address it. This is the United States. Wealthy white people don't hang out around poor white people. Wealthy black people are not going to hang around and have an agenda of upliftment around poor black people, not to the degree that I think Antonio would be satisfied with. They put their efforts into philanthropic work. They put their efforts into things that don't necessarily disrupt the order that causes this stratification in the first place. For some reason, he wants to put that all on the back of Issa Rae's mother and Issa Rae, rather than just acknowledging that this is a part of the system. This is how everyone within the system behaves. And the majority of black people in Hollywood are more like Issa Rae than they are like anybody who is struggling in the working class parts of Los Angeles. That's just a fact. That is just a fact of life. Same thing with the white side of Hollywood. There are plenty of articles now talking about how the fact, even people you don't think are related to anybody, even if their parents weren't actors or whatever, their parents were somewhere in the industry, their parents were executives, something. So this is the nature of socioeconomic upward mobility in this country. But for some reason, it only bothers him because Issa Rae is the subject, and y'all need to see the thinly veiled inadequacies that he's projecting onto her.
American descends of slavery when I say ADOS. The suffocation of being ADOS in America with that lived experience. Also, no living well ain't it. You don't know enough. They are beyond aberration. Her and her mama that ran off to Senegal. She skipped over Louisiana. I'm from there. I ain't going there. Skipped over Atlanta. Skipped over Philadelphia. I'm going straight to Senegal. I don't even know nobody there. He do.
Okay, and no offense to anyone, but this might be fatherless logic, but she is the wife in the situation, and if they're in a traditional American or African marriage, yeah, she's gonna go where her husband can lead and succeed. She's just a teacher. Your husband's a doctor. Why wouldn't you want his career to come first? Right? So it's wherever he needs to go. Maybe he doesn't think like that because that was not a factor in his upbringing, but for a lot of people, that is the way that it goes. So I'm not sure why this is a point of suspicion.
The middle LA black family, when I wrote the below for the Sentinel, our black paper in Los Angeles had $200 living. The middle black family in Los Angeles only worth $200 living. I wrote it back in 2017. So while she's doing Insecure for y'all, I'm trying to tell y'all about the true lack of security in black LA. Can we get to it? Can I talk about it? But when they come back from Dakar, Senegal, they move to one of the very affluent and richest areas in the country, Potomac, Maryland, that's 65-70% white, is 5% black, and I bet you damn near half, if not a lot of that, is black immigrants. They then got together. Census got an article about it, I'll share in a second. Potomac, Maryland is one of the richest cities. So if we ain't in Potomac, and if we got to choose blacks, we gonna choose the Windsor Hills ones. But then we want to do shows and we want to crip walk. Potomac, Maryland is one of the richest cities in the U.S. with a median household income of $200,000 in 2021, which is 188% higher than the national median. The middle black family makes $45,000. Potomac is also home to more billionaires than any other city in Maryland with $2 billion and a combined net worth of $9 billion. Potomac is a suburb of D.C. with a population of 46,000. This is Potomac. This is Potomac. This is their parade. Vote for change, and I don't like Republicans. This is Potomac right here, boy. You got the goats with the white lady, and they got the drums. That's where Issa Rae moved after Senegal. While it's considered by many to be the Beverly Hills of Montgomery County, so she moved to the Beverly Hills of black people and went in the Beverly Hills of Potomac, and then she was like the Beverly Hills in Dakar, but she crip walking, and she gonna tell the story of struggle in LA. This Jody Ann had a tweet, and she said, I had no idea she was Senegalese. I don't know how you watch the show and don't know that. What failure is it that you don't know what you eat? I had no idea that ham was from pigs. I had no idea that hot dogs was made from the stuff on the ground in the meat shack. I had no idea she was Senegalese. Now, she's half Senegalese, but the mama anchored it in. So if the mama is pushing to Senegal, and the daddy is Senegalese, when we gonna realize this ADOS thing that y'all done really anchored in, that's not pushing nothing here, identity-wise. I had no idea she was Senegalese, but she's still black and adopted to the black American culture because she was born in LA. All right. I don't even think she knows where her black... I don't even think. How about you don't think at all? And just read the realities of her mama running to Senegal. And also the fact that that was all the pioneers. And also the fact she wasn't here for the riots. And also the fact that she married a Senegalese man. She know where to end. She know where to end because she married a Senegalese man. It end right where he started. It's only 22,000 or 23,000.
I'm not listening to no black man from California question a dark-skinned black woman in California about who she marries. Like, this is how you know Antonio got that spirit of Kevin Samuels in him, but he's just too smart to speak directly to that. But it comes out. It comes out all the time because you can't be in fellowship with black men and not notice, especially in LA, you can't be in fellowship with black men in LA and not notice how they behave. Even black people from other states that I've met have always said that black people in LA are weird, and like black men in LA, like even black men will say black men in LA are weird, like compared to the South. So it's interesting to me that he keeps harping on her marriage when one, his peers are have an aversion to marriage, and two, when they do marry, especially particularly in California, they do not marry women that look like Issa Rae. So has he talked about that within the community? Did he challenge Tariq Nasheed on having a mixed race wife who I believe, I don't even know if her black side is ADOS. Like he knows who to challenge. Like I said, weak men do not challenge men, but for some reason he's obsessed with her husband. Why wouldn't a girl who's half Senegalese have a Senegalese husband? I don't know.
In America. But you gonna tell us that she don't know. You know, you the expert. She wasn't born and raised in Los Angeles. A large chunk of her life was in a white community in Maryland. You made a Plato person. This is Potomac, Maryland, where Issa Rae was raised after living in Senegal, during an era where many ADOS hadn't been on a plane. But pricey Potomac Street boasts mansions linked to African ruler. Yatma Jedi from Gambia. They did a whole article on it. The real dictators of Potomac, Maryland, back in 2017. Pricey Potomac Street boasts mansions linked to African rulers. Neighbors on Big Cross Drive, a quiet street of gated mansions and immaculate lawns, inside the usual suspect for one of Maryland's priciest zip codes. Professional basketball players, doctors, business executives, African dictators, question mark. Reports that Yama Jami, president of Gambia, purchased a $3.5 million mansion in Potomac hit the expatriate Gambian press in late August. The home was purchased in September 2010 by an unincorporated...
Just for the record, even though y'all know this, you know that Issa Rae is not from Gambia, nor does she have Gambian heritage. So just understand that he's bringing this up because he has nothing else to say.
Entity called the trustees of the My J Family Trust, which has been linked by many Gambian expatriates, news agencies, and the country's main opposition party to Jamie family. So this is where they move. But it isn't accidental. This census article, you go read it on your own, because I cut sections out so you can kind of get it, was written in 2008. African-born blacks in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Mm-hmm. This is a hyper selection of where you're going to go and where you're going to go to avoid that ADOS, but you're going to make insecure show.
No, this is a hyper selection because immigrants cluster around each other. So if you mentioned Polish people, I would know that you're probably talking about Chicago. If you mentioned Italians, you're probably talking about New Jersey, New York. If you mention Chinese, you're probably talking about San Francisco. If you mention Nigerians, you're probably talking about Houston or Atlanta. You can name a particular, if you're talking about Ethiopians, you're talking about Washington, D.C. If you name a particular ethnic group, nationality or ethnic group, you can probably pinpoint where they go because they cluster around each other. But again, he talks about flat blackness, but he operates only on a flat idea of what black is.
Black African immigrants began arriving in the Washington, D.C. area in the late 50s and early 60s. When they say they began, they talk about 5 people, 10 people. We know by the Smithsonian the amount of black immigrants was to the right of the decimal before the 60s. They talk about a few people. But then when they started coming more, that's where where should I live? We living over here in Potomac. Come on over here. Don't go over there. Go to Potomac.
How are they in Potomac if only 5% of the population of Potomac is black? And the majority of immigrants are not wealthy like that. They might be middle class. Many of them I noticed on the East Coast are poor. So how are they in Potomac? I just want you to point out that inconsistency there.
In the early 60s, as a diplomat of newly independent African countries and as students, particularly at historically black Howard University, beginning in the 80s, these early immigrants were joined by growing numbers of refugees, diversity visa holders, and other immigrants from sub-Saharan Africa. So were the refugees going to Potomac too? Or where were the refugees going? So how are they clustering? Because when you're poor, you can't necessarily choose. Your choice is limited, right? So they were choosing based on whether or not other immigrants were there so that they can get resources and have community with people who are like them. But he's gonna overlook that. Washington metropolitan area became a top destination for refugees, except in the U.S. Between 83 and 04, more than 12,000. They say these numbers like they're huge. Again, there are 50 million now. ADOS black folks. 40 to 45, 50 million. 12,000. Sub-Saharan African refugees were settled in the area. Sub-Saharan Africans made up an increasingly large share of refugees coming in the area. 11% in the 80s, 30% in the 90s, and 67% between 2000 and 2004. So we're going to hyper-select and get away from y'all. But we don't tell y'all that show. Interviews with black...
How is that getting away from people when these were poor people settling in D.C.? Again, you see how he's jumping ideas so that you miss that sleight of hand. They were not relocating to Potomac. They were moving to D.C. Refugees Refugees can't move to Potomac. They don't have Potomac money. They're living 5, 6 in a 2-bedroom apartment. That's what they're doing. But they're living around each other to support each other. But he's skipping over this because it doesn't feed the paranoia he's trying to instill in ADOS people about immigrants.
African immigrants in Washington revealed that the metropolitan area is attractive to them for 4 main reasons. They're going to leave out that fifth that they ADOS people over there. There's a lot of white folk. It's cosmopolitan nature, it's manageability, it's static.
Like I said, it's funny because at this time, Washington, D.C. was still a chocolate city. It was still a black city. So they weren't segregating themselves from black people. In fact, the majority of them live in Prince George's County, which was one of the blackest counties, I think, in the country at that point. So again, he's going to skip over all this because it doesn't feed his narrative.
This, as a center for international work and its standing as a capital city. All right. Washington revealed that the metro area is attractive to them for 4 main reasons. The Census Bureau's 2005 American Community Survey counted 114,000 black immigrants in the Washington metro area, accounting for about 11% of the area's total immigrant population. The Washington area stands out as the preferred destination for Ethiopians. So this is a whole article. You can read about how there's a hyper.
Look, you see, he's not gonna go over it because it doesn't support his stupidity. He's not gonna read it because it doesn't support his stupidity. All right, Ethiopians amongst Africans are not some of the highest income or highest educated Africans in this country. So they are in D.C. They're not in Potomac necessarily. Potomac is full of black Americans for sure. The few wealthy blacks that are there, it's overwhelmingly black Americans who have long, obviously the wealthier ones who have long histories in that region. But again,
election to move to places like Potomac. But these people are struggling because it doesn't fit the way that they created this blackness that ain't real. They don't even use black in Africa. There's too many black folk. They use tribes.
That's also not true. And, I'm annoyed by Chimamanda for perpetuating that. People know that they're black. It's not as much of an important identity depending on the country you're from. But if you're from South Africa, if you're from Kenya, if you're from Zimbabwe, it depends on where you're from. They know what black is. The idea that they don't is insane. In a country like Nigeria, it's far less important because yes, your ethnic group matters probably more than race because everyone's black, right? But in a country where they had higher white populations, it's different. That shouldn't surprise anybody.
I ain't gotta tell it to you. There's a whole article on City Lab where the Kenyan lady says that in effect, I didn't learn about being black till I got to goddamn America. Mm-hmm. Everybody black where I'm from. She kind of not right though because Issa has said it.
Right, I didn't learn about being black because everybody's black. So if they really didn't know they were black, why would she say everybody's black? What they're actually saying is black doesn't function as much as a salient part of their identity because everybody's black. It doesn't mean that they don't know that they're black.
Senegalese and half black American, and Issa was born in LA. I see the point she's trying to make though. What is this man talking about? Many of you are just rambling. Potomac is 5% black and it's like an immigrant enclave. She lived from Senegal to Potomac and came here to LA later.
Tone does not believe there are wealthy ADOS people. Tone does not. If y'all want to read a book about certain communities like that, I recommend a book called Negro Land. He does not believe these people exist. He doesn't believe that they congregate, they marry each other, they have social clubs and organizations. They exist. And because it's not feeding the narrative that he wants to feed, he's disregarding them, which is wild to me.
Even then was partitioned off in Ladera. Let's talk about it. You know what? That kind of thing. Oh, can I get to it? Y'all made Play-Doh, Issa Rae. Then put her together and let her do this buffoon blackfacing. This might be a whole white lady doing this cool goofball stuff. Let's get to it. 310-388-3499. I know a lot of people are like, damn. In 1988, they moved to a lavish home, kitted out with. So when she's 3, we gonna move to Dakar, Senegal with a man. I seen my mama get changed together to get sued. So while that's going on in LA, she and her mama ran off and they in Dakar, Senegal with a Senegalese man.
What do you want Issa Rae to do about? What do you want her to do? Should she cut you a check? What?
With a maid. But hold on, when we talk about this maid thing, what are we talking about? Shout out to JT. What are we talking about when we talk about a maid? Tell me why you bring it up. They moved to a lavish home in 88. She was born in 85. Kitted out with a security guard and a maid. But we gotta connect with our other impoverished folk. Since we talk about Pan-Africanism in these parts of the country, they don't get to come here. There's a movie. Go check out the movie. It's called The Silent Monologue. It came out in 2008. Emancipation That Cost Servitude. In Silent Monologue, a 45-minute film co-directed by the Senegalese connoisseur and the Belgian Charlie Van Damme, shot in Dakar, the same Dakar that Issa Rae mama moved to get a lavish home with a doctor. The film questions the conditions of domestic workers, the house that had the maid in it, commonly known as the maids. Silla and Van Dam draw our attention to the condition of all migrant and poor workers, including washerwomen and precarious agricultural workers, with which the card is about. If their work makes everyone's daily life possible because they hold the domestic economy together, their presence is barely tolerated. Mm-hmm. She married a Senegalese man, but she made the show that you love. And they're desperate.
I want y'all to, please, it can't just be me that sees something wrong with his spirit is off with all this. This is not a good faith analysis of Issa Rae or her art. This is not a good faith analysis of Issa Rae or her politic. This is an ad hominem attack. This is an attack on her personhood. And if you think this really has anything to do with advancing ADOS as a cause, he has you confused. This is a very jealous, very bitter man. And I'm not saying he's jealous of her because she's half African. Not at all. Not at all. Because I recently also watched his video on Kimberly Crenshaw. Let me know if you want me to kind of go over that video as well. But I think there's a little bit of professional jealousy when it comes to people who are in fields that are similar to his. I think that are advancing in ways that maybe he does not feel that he's getting credit for, which is absolutely sad because I think the ADOS movement is special. I think it's important. I think the legacy is going to speak for itself. And I don't think he's satisfied with that, to be honest. I don't think he's satisfied with that fact because people like this get their credit when they die. I gotta be honest. Issa got to live in the sun momentarily. She got to be the it girl in a way that people don't give that to a lot of people who do this type of activist work. And yeah, I think he's bothered by that.
Destiny seems neither to interest nor to move. Hence, Silla's central question, which challenges all: why must the emancipation of some be paid at the cost of the servitude of others? Yet, this care work is among the most poorly paid and often occurs without a contract. Informal, or rather informalized, these invisibilized workers live in a precarious condition and are sometimes subjected to terrible abuse and mistreatment. In Senegal, the law does not protect the domestic worker as negotiations are dealt with by stakeholders. As the film ends, the voice that whispered a promise of revolution screamed: the invisibilized and precarious workers do not want to wait any longer. This film is a manifesto for the status of women in Senegal, because beyond the representation of the domestic worker who is mute in this film, we find women who are muzzled and enslaved. The right to voice into decent working conditions is a struggle. So the woman who had a maid in Senegal is now speaking for ADOS, and y'all don't know the difference.
Okay, I find this really interesting, especially since in this past week, Smokey Robinson is being sued for tens of millions of dollars for the repeated victimization, both sexual and physical and emotional, of his servants in this country. You don't have to go all the way to Africa to find that in systems like this, in these hyper-capitalist systems that exploit people's bodies, of which many countries in Africa are like that, poor people, servants, are treated like they are nothing. So yes, there's a problem with exploited labor class, definitely in Senegal, definitely where my parents are from, where I'm from in Nigeria, and definitely in the United States. And that man is very much ADOS. He's spoken very clearly that he doesn't even like being called African American because he's not African. But he didn't have to go to Africa for him and his wife to severely abuse their help, because we do not value people that do that type of work. And that happens across ethnicities and across races. So historically, black people with money treated their servants the way other people treated their servants. Even though I have to say I've read memoirs of when black working class and middle class women went over to Germany during the war, that a lot of people said, actually, a lot of the European women said that they preferred to work for the black women than they did the white women, because they said the black women were nicer. So that's an example of when I would say that, yes, middle class, the wives of these soldiers and things had a really, really positive reputation. But in general, yeah, people with money don't treat people who don't have money very well. That's not a revelation.
Y'all watch this goddamn show. It's trash. Can I talk about it? Carl, what's your name? Where you come from? Give me your take on it, because I'm about to get it. Oh, actually, let me finish this up. I brought you in, but let me finish this up. Here go the names. They got a whole other article. Exploitation of domestic workers in West Africa. The exploitation of domestic workers, the vast majority of whom are women, has slipped under the radar. So the woman who had a maid at 3 has now started crip walking at 40. While she married a Senegalese man on purpose, it's only 22,000 on the year. Go ahead.
Let me I have to really bring home the fact that Antonio Moore is not a married man. I think given his background, given his education, given what he has done, I think he contributed politically and socially to his people. He would have his pick of women. if he so wanted to. But based on other videos I've seen him produce, some of them that have been since privated, he has issues with women in general. And you can tell because of his fixation on who Issa married. Did you want to marry her? Do black men in LA that look like you marry women that look like you? Or marry women that look like her? Or they find the chubbiest little burrito and they marry her, and then they talk about how the black and Latino community are one and the same. Why they call you mayete and this and that and this and this and this and that. He has no beef. He has no smoke for them, right? It's all for Issa. Issa at 3 years old is responsible for the exploitation of a maid in her home at the age of 3, age of 4, age of 5. She is responsible for the maid working in her home. Okay, that is what he's giving you at this point. This is how dry his well is. This is how empty his bowl of rice is. He has nothing to say about her anymore because he didn't watch the show. He doesn't know how to analyze the show. He's not analyzing her art or her political stance. He's just picking apart her heritage. And I promise you that the people that helped him work on his projects, I'm sure he didn't run through their heritage. I'm sure he didn't run through their heritage. I'm sure had one of them called him up tomorrow or if Issa called him up tomorrow and said, hey, let's do this, these videos would disappear. I promise you that. I promise you that. The way he was giggling whenever he talks to Ice Cube, giggling like he's on his prom, like he's on a prom date. Please don't be fooled by what he's doing here. Please do not be fooled by what he is doing here.
Yeah, I've been calling this out. I've been doing it for about 15 years. I've been known for this. But the Africans, they also, everyone talks about them like this. Like, we come to school, they're being out the religion, so they have a bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah, they get their own church and all that. And I'm not saying you don't, but just don't sell us no TV show. This ain't the person that should ever done a show for ADOS people. And damn sure not a show for LA. She wasn't even here for the riots. Give me the last take.
She wasn't even here for the riots. He does not know how insane he sounds.
On the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the show deep, but I think because we have ADOS is connected, the answer get their show shoes and get a green light and polish. I feel like everybody just helps to look available. But you don't tell shows we want to do the show that's different, more shows they can be on.
I can barely understand what this caller is saying, but I know that this man is local. This man is from LA for sure. I can't even understand what he's saying. So I'm about to cut this off in a minute because the rest of the calls I just couldn't really make out. But I can just tell from that he's local.
Thank you so much, caller. So somebody on Twitter, Montez now, with the Lakers in his profile picture, he said Issa is just as much ADOS as you. Look, there's the genetic reality being ADOS, and then there's the personal experience of your lived life, and then there's the reality of your cultural connection, and I don't think so. She ain't. Lady was in the car.
Okay, so he's established 3 criteria. There's your genetic heritage, of which she has half. There is, he said, your cultural experience, of which she has the cultural experience of many upper middle class black people in this country, regardless of their heritage, which is an experience he seems to want to deny. And then third, you have your everyday lived experience reality, of which she spent a lot of time in Africa, but she's half African. I mean, what are you gonna say? So there you go. But flat blackness means that there's only one valid experience by Antonio's definition. And it seems a bit hypocritical to me because I grew up mostly around ADOS people, and I can tell you they're very diverse. I've been all over the country. There are major regional differences, I think, that are not appreciated even by other black people, particularly black people like Antonio. So yeah, I'm gonna stop this here, or maybe I'll skip over to the Yvette part because the rest of this is just kind of like muffled phone calls. Let me see. Okay.
I want you guys to stay an additional 10 minutes to see a couple clips from older shows from the last few years where me, myself, and Yvette Carnell talked about Issa Rae. Because at the end of the day, maybe your insecurities is why you watch Insecure. Let's talk about it.
I think your insecurities is why you spent years talking about this woman and hours talking about her in stream. Like this, like I said, she got to have this man on the watch list because this isn't funny.
They consider themselves not African American like you. They consider themselves Senegalese-American. And that's what the case is here. She calls herself Halfrican. You're not Halfrican.
I think Halfrican is a pretty accurate description, which is she's both. You know, I think it speaks to her being culturally African, but also culturally American. I think she went to Charles Drew School, so she was around a certain type of black kid at that time. I don't know.
You're just American. And if anything, you're African American. And that isn't a connotation just of being from Africa, but that's also a connotation of you don't know what part of Africa you're from. So,
well, no, that would make her African American and Senegalese-American. So she's both. African American are those people who are ADOS, even though, we'll say ADOS, but we know that not all people who are descendant, who have been here multi-generationally were necessarily enslaved, but she's a descendant of people who've been here for a long time and the descendant of people who just got here. So I think African American is an ethnicity, Senegalese is an ethnicity, she's Halfrican. I think that makes sense. I don't know.
Well, for her to be able to call herself Senegalese-American and then play on the tropes of black life that she herself individually does not have is a problem. So I come to...
But he didn't watch the show, and I feel like, I didn't watch it too much either, but I felt like the show was limited in its ability to tell a story, but she went into the show expressing that. She said the show is not going to speak to everyone's existence. So I'm not sure what he wants from her, because any show he would have produced would have had the same issue. There's no one black experience, right? There's no flat black experience, but there's just the experience that he wants to say is the most authentic experience. Just because it's the experience of the majority doesn't mean that it's the only experience, and doesn't mean it's the only authentic experience. And this is what he is struggling with, in addition to his just general jealousy and I think issues he has with women. Because like I said, he's worried about her husband. Where is your wife, Antonio? Where is Mrs. Moore? Where's Mrs. Antonio Moore? I want to know. I want to know what she looks like. I think he's hiding himself a little burrito behind the scenes. Let's see.
So and I just want to break down her background. Her father's from Senegal, and he's a pediatrician. The mom's a teacher, and they met in France. The family lived in Senegal for some time. Then they moved to Maryland until she was in 6th grade. That's a long time. All your formative years aren't here.
He's repeating himself.
I've been here since I was born. And that doesn't mean, in a sense, that I don't think that you can somehow be part of the narrative here. But you can't be the one to create it. No, I don't believe so. And so I come to...
I wonder if everyone that worked on his projects were only ADOS people. I wonder if that was the case. I'm just curious. I'm going to look that up. I haven't looked it up, but I'm going to look up and see who's associated with his work.
The next part. So when 6th grade, she moved from Maryland, which was like, as I understand, a whiter area of Maryland, to this black, elite Windsor Hills area in Los Angeles. So let me explain what the problem is just there. Windsor Hills is about 2 square miles. The other adjacent areas, like Ladera Heights, that's about another 2 square miles. Together, they have maybe 17,000 people, but somehow they have framed a narrative and a visual of the city and its African Americans in a way that is just insane. A city of millions of African Americans is framed an identity based on 20,000 people.
There's nothing wrong with that. If you watch Sex and the City, is that the lives? Are those examples of the lives of the average 4 white women in New York? No. And there was a reality show called Baldwin Hills that people loved. And I think she tried to do a similar reality show later that African American people loved. People like watching art that represents life. They like watching art that reflects life. But they also like watching art in shows and television shows that are aspirational to some degree. So the fact that she's not reflecting the experience that he thinks is most accurate or valid doesn't mean the show is bad because of that. I mean, no offense, Issa, but I do think the writing was weak. I think that's why it was hard for me to get into a lot of it. But I don't have a problem with the premise that the show is not for everybody. The show wasn't for me. Maybe my working class roots made it difficult for me to hear, because as soon as she said the N-word thing, I felt that, because I grew up around working class black people, and I felt like they're way more conservative than I think people realize. and I just, people didn't fling, even when I went to Crenshaw, people didn't fling the N-word like that. Like, I don't know. But, there you go.
Understand that. Maybe 4,000 families, like units. No, you're negligible in terms of the data. So, as a result, when we look at them portraying the image of...
Okay, but your show was about drug dealing. How many people were really drug dealers?
Of a city that literally, like I said earlier in the Color of Wealth report, has a middle black family that has $200 liquid. It's a problem. It's a problem when HBO doesn't want to see a show about, black real life next to a payday loan place, like it is in South Central Los Angeles, in Compton. But they want to put on a show about Windsor Hills. Come on, man. And some people would say, well, she shows those areas. I don't want her to show it. I don't want to see it through her eyes. We can see, that's like seeing it through a white person's eyes that's driving from Beverly Hills to teach at Crenshaw or teach at Dorsey. It's
interesting he says that, because like I said, when's the last time Ice Cube lived in any community like that? He was a teen, or just barely out of his teen years, when he became incredibly wealthy. And since then, he's been living, where does he live? Temecula? Topanga? Who is better equipped to tell the story of working class black people other than working class black people? The problem is those people don't get into the kind of rooms in which they can tell their own stories. I don't think Antonio Moore would be equipped to tell that story necessarily either. Not anymore, not in 2025. Maybe in 1995, not in 2025. So I don't really think this is his real issue with her. I think it's his issue is pettier and more embarrassing, which is why he's trying to cover it in this language and cover it in this issue, when in reality his issue is much more personal.
Thing is, oh, she went to Crenshaw. Going to Crenshaw or having a single mom is not the same. Going to Crenshaw and coming down the hill ain't like going to Crenshaw coming up the hill. So me, myself, giving you a little of my background so we're all clear. I grew up with my mother, but my parents had me really young. They had me at 16. 16, basically going on 17, 5 days difference. And I grew up where crack first came to be, where Freeway Rick first saw crack. When I was going to UCLA, right before I went to UCLA, and I don't share this story, but it's kind of poignant for this moment. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time, I got shot in the leg. Ambulance had to come. I had to go to the hospital. The narrative of Los Angeles isn't what she's talking about. That's my problem. Now,
I don't want to seem insensitive, so I'm not going to say anything.
we can move to the relationship problem part at one point in this conversation, which is very problematic. The schizophrenic, kind of like damaging imagery that she's showing a whole bunch of young black women that don't have a Senegalese dad that frame their identity of men in a healthy way.
This is so interesting because, you know, he seems to be a fan of rappers. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And if you are worried about the framing of black womanhood, you need to start with the men that you're scared of. You need to start with the way that those men portray women and frame women within your community. Issa can't undo decades of degradation. She can't. So if you don't have videos specifically speaking to the issues with how black men in this country and black men globally, frankly, portray black women, I don't want to hear you confront Issa Rae. I don't like weak men who have 2 hours and hours of smoke for women but are scared of men. I think Yvette, even when Tariq Nasheed started aggressively attacking him, calling him all kinds of gay and this and that, Yvette had bigger nuts in the situation to go hard at Tariq than Antonio did. And this tells me something about him. This tells me that this is not about a true analysis and a true examination of the issues of cultural representation in media. This is about, I don't know if he's attracted to her. I don't know if I don't know why he's stuck on her. I feel like maybe his show was supposed to come out at the time. Maybe he was making moves at the time and it didn't work out for him. And he saw that it worked out for her. I don't know. But whatever it is, because then after I saw his video on Kimberly Crenshaw, who is ADOS, it's the same energy. It's the same hateration energy. I think this guy just has real Kevin Samuels energy and it's gross.
It's blackfacing for me.
And you know what's really sad? Like I said before, I take it that he's an intelligent man. I take it that he could be better than what I think he is, or how I think he's acting.
Dangerous for you. So what I want to do is I want to kind of explain to you some of the Senegalese-Americans. You know, we got Akon. Akon, I shout out to him. Sat down with him for several hours with Rick. We got the girl from Precious.
Interesting, because Akon has said some really problematic things about African Americans. But interesting. I wonder if he confronted Akon about that. Like I said, these type of men don't confront men.
Couple out there, Senegalese-Americans that are in our sphere, and I don't have a problem with that as long as they just make it clear and don't traffic on this narrative of having like a black trope or a black struggle that you don't have personal shows dealing with. I
mean, Akon wrote "Locked Up." He hasn't been locked up. You get what I'm going? This is what I'm saying. That this really is not about Issa's work at all. None of this was about her work. This is a personal attack. This is a personal attack by a man who sees himself as aggrieved. When they talk about the male loneliness epidemic, I want you to see the character of the type of men who struggle with women.
Go ahead.
Can I address something? Antonio? I just want to address something.
Sometimes you gotta let it go. She gets fired up.
I was looking at the chat and somebody said, well, one of the things these tone don't do is enrich our behavior. Let me just tell you something. First of all, what is our behavior? Tell me what data that you show that shows that black people on average have worse behavior. Because it shows, you look at data, black people and white people do drugs around the same amount and get arrested at very different levels. So first of all, I want to know what data you're looking at today. And you say, well, black boys have their pants hung down around their waist. You know, a lot of white boys and girls dressing all black nails and purple hair. So who's to say? So like, one of the things that just really bothers me is the way black people sit around and blame other black people and get other people that used to hate us in our own home. When you say that kind of stuff, understand that if you are an African American, you hate yourself. And you might want to get some therapy. Antonio, what did you say about we might need lineage therapy? We might need some lineage therapy, but until we can get that, you need to get your own therapy. Because what you're saying is not anyway. You know, the reason you say that is because you listen to people that come here and just tell a lie. So somebody can come here and say, yes, you don't understand. In my country, we have kings and queens, and we don't act like y'all act. People are, oh my God, I've never been there. They do things differently. Well, go there and see what.
Okay, yeah, I will give Yvette that, absolutely. I think, well, first of all, a lot of people are guilty of perpetuating like anti-black stereotypes, and absolutely black behavior is pathologized in ways that behavior of other people, including black immigrants, aren't. And black immigrants do play a role in perpetuating this. It's this idea of a racial and social hierarchy, and you trying your best to not be at the bottom where you think black Americans are. So Yvette has a point there. Like, I don't even befault her for that. But again, the question is, how is that Issa Rae's fault? You can critique her work, of which this entire hour and some change, none of this was about her work. None of this was a deep analysis of the work itself. The only thing close to an analysis was what that woman said at the beginning of the video, right? This was all an attack on her personhood. And I think it's despicable, you know. So I'm gonna end this here because I think the rest of it got really muffled. But if you want to see part 2 of this, because he did another whole video about her, go ahead. And like, if you want to also see me talk about his issue with intersectionality and Kimberly Crenshaw, I can do a video about that. And let me say up front, I do not consider myself an intersectional feminist, but I do think Kimberly Crenshaw is one of the greatest minds that came out of that era. And it boils my blood that someone would degrade her work because they misunderstand her work. So I'm gonna end there. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment. Yeah, and I'll see you in the next video.